In the spring of 1970, the war in Vietnam was raging.
American battle deaths in Vietnam now number 40,142.
And at home, anti-war protesters and law enforcement officers were violently clashing.
68 began with the Tet Offensive. Then My Lai was in March. In April, oh my God, Martin was gone. And then Bobby got killed. You can see things are very rapidly unwinding inside of America. We needed to find new ways of exposing that war and opposing that war.
In other news, the FBI is reported preparing to shut down some of the 500 small agencies it maintains around the country because of security reasons. Last month, more than 1,000 documents were stolen from the FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania.
They called themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. They went down this corridor, past the local draft board, and somehow got through this door into the FBI office and stole all the files, documents, and correspondence there.
Recent events have given more indication of the extent of government snooping on civilians. Stolen FBI records which have been made public.
Good evening. I'm Roger Grimsby with the news at 6. Today's top stories: the United States government brings charges against Fielding Mellish as a subversive imposter. New York garbage men are striking for a better class of garbage, and the National Rifle Association declares death a good thing. Details on these and other stories in a moment.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Name?
J. Edgar Hoover,
Occupation?
head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
You tell the court why you're dressed like this?
I have many enemies, and I rarely go out unless I'm in disguise.
Mr. Hoover, in your opinion, is Fielding Mellish a threat to the security of the United States?
Enough to have his phone tapped.
Tell the court why you think he is a traitor to this country.
I think Mr. Mellish is a traitor to this country because his views are different from the views of the president and others of his kind. Differences of opinion should be tolerated, but not when they're too different. Then he becomes a subversive mother.
Fielding Mellish was found guilty today on 12 counts of treason and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The judge suspended the sentence in return for the promise that Mellish will not move into his neighborhood.
This is the government. The government can do whatever it wants. Don't you know that? He's violating the Bill of Rights. It's against the Constitution. Don't be bothering the U.S. government with the Constitution.
Secret FBI memos made public today show that the late J. Edgar Hoover ordered a nationwide campaign to disrupt the activities of the New Left without telling any of his superiors about it. Many of the techniques were clearly illegal. Burglaries, forged blackmail letters, and threats of violence were used.
The FBI initially defended its actions.
The government would have been derelict in its duty had it not taken measures to protect the fabric of our society.
But the Bureau's techniques were worse, and the targets more far-reaching than the burglars ever imagined.
Diplomats, government employees, sports figures, socially prominent persons, senators, and congressmen.
The FBI at one time sought to blackmail the late Martin Luther King into committing suicide.
Marriages were destroyed, violence was encouraged, many Americans were tapped and bugged, had their mail opened by the CIA and the FBI, and their tax returns used illegally.
Bonnie Raines worked at a daycare center in Philadelphia. Her husband John taught religion at Temple University. They were the very picture of a golden couple.
We had an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old.
That activism attracted the attention of the FBI. Its director, the powerful and feared J. Edgar Hoover, perceived the anti-war movement, which ranged from radical revolutionaries to peaceful protesters, as a threat to national security. Protesters like the Raines became increasingly convinced the FBI was conducting a covert campaign against them, tapping their phones and infiltrating anti-war groups.
We knew the FBI was systematically trying to squash dissent, and dissent is the lifeblood of democracy.
Determined to get proof the FBI was crossing the line, fellow activist and Haverford physics professor William Davidon hatched a plan. he reached out to the Rains and 6 others, including a social worker, a graduate student, and a taxi driver named Keith Forsyth.
We agreed to meet someplace where we could talk. And he says, what would you think about the idea of breaking into an FBI office? And I look at him and I'm like, you're serious, aren't you? I was pretty vehement in my opposition to the war, and I felt like marching up and down the street with a sign was not cutting it anymore. And it was like, okay, time to kick it up a notch.
The crew decided to break into a small FBI field office in Media, Pennsylvania.
Once I got over the shock of thinking that this was the nuttiest thing I'd ever heard in my life, I'm like, this is a great idea, because we're not going to make any allegations. We're going to take their own paperwork signed by their own people, including J. Edgar Hoover, and give it to the newspapers. So let's see you argue with that.
In the Rains' third-floor attic, the team divvied up responsibilities and assigned tasks. They hung maps to learn about the neighborhood, planned escape routes, and they took extensive notes on the comings and goings in the building.
I signed up for a correspondence course in locksmithing. That was my job, to get us in the door. Practice several times a week. After a month, you get pretty good.
Bonnie was assigned the job of going inside and casing the office.
I was to call the office and make an appointment as a Swarthmore student, doing research on opportunities for women in the FBI. So they gave me an appointment. I tried to disguise myself as best I could, and I went to say goodbye, and I acted confused about where the door was, and that gave me a chance then to check out both rooms and know where the file cabinets were.
Bonnie discovered there was no alarm system and no security guards. She also found a second door leading inside.
When she came back with that news, we became convinced, yes, I think we can get this done. We had more to lose than anybody else in the group because we had these kids.
We faced the reality of if we were arrested and on trial, we would be in prison for very many years. We had to make some plans for that.
With a solid understanding of how they would conduct the break-in, they now needed to figure out when.
March 8th, 1971, Fraser and Ali were fighting for the championship of the world. And we had the feeling that maybe the cops might be a little bit distracted.
While the crew waited at a nearby hotel, Forsyth arrived at the office alone.
Pull up, walk up to the door, and one of the locks is a cylinder tumbler lock, not a pin tumbler lock. And I just about had a heart attack. Bottom line is I could not pick that lock.
They almost called it off, but that second door that Bonnie noticed gave them another chance.
At that point, you know that you're going to have to wing it. Knelt down on the floor, picked the lock in like 20 seconds. There was a deadbolt on the other side. I had a pry bar with me, a short crowbar. I put the bar in there and yanked that sucker. At one point, I heard a noise inside the office. And I'm like, are they in there waiting for me? Basically said to myself, there's only one way to find out. I'm going in.
Next, the inside crew walked into an empty office wearing business suits and carrying several suitcases. They cleaned out file cabinets and then made their way downstairs to the getaway car and drove off unnoticed. The group reconvened at a farmhouse an hour's drive away and started unpacking.
We were like, oh man, I can't believe this worked. We knew there was going to be some gold in there somewhere.
After several long nights digging for documents that looked the most revealing, the burglars sent copies to journalists, including Washington Post reporter Betty Metzger.
The cover letter was from the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI, and the first file that I read was about a group of FBI agents who were told to enhance the paranoia in the anti-war movement and to create an atmosphere that there's an FBI agent behind every mailbox.
Attorney General John Mitchell asked the Post not to write about the stolen documents, saying it could endanger lives. But the Post did publish the story on the front page. It was the first of several reports and told how agents turned local police, letter carriers, and switchboard operators into informants.
There were very strong editorials calling for an investigation of the FBI.
Another stolen document would prove even more explosive, a routing slip marked with a mysterious word, COINTELPRO. While reporters tried to uncover its meaning, the FBI was desperate to find the burglars. The Bureau put nearly 200 agents on the investigation. Hoover's best lead was the college girl who had visited their office. Agents actively searched for Bonnie, but there were many anti-war activists who fit her description. The burglars were never caught. 5 years later, with the statute of limitations running out, the FBI closed the case, unsolved.
The thing that most concerned them were whether or not COINTELPRO would be revealed. Only one of the documents I received contained the term COINTELPRO. But of all the stolen files, that one would have the most far-reaching impact.
Others. The documents prove
2 years later, NBC reporter Carl Stern figured out the meaning of that word, COINTELPRO.
The America we live in today must awaken to the danger. A tidal wave of lawless tyranny is now surging forth from the criminal and subversive underworlds.
J. Edgar Hoover had a very particular conception of the United States. He was very suspicious of dissent against the Vietnam War. He was suspicious of people who wore beards or had long hair. He couldn't imagine that it was legitimate for people he would have regarded as hippies to influence policy, war policy, foreign policy, by demonstrating in the streets.
Contracts were signed today for a heavyweight championship fight between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, a match at Madison Square Garden in New York on March 8th.
teach you how to find yourself. La down
It's been over 2 months now, and the FBI hasn't been able to nab the thieves who stole the FBI's own documents in Pennsylvania. One day they will, but in the meantime, those in-basket burglars keep publicizing choice bits from the documents, thinking of themselves, obviously, as Robin Hoods mocking the blundering sheriff of Nottingham.
At the Washington Post, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. At that time, no news organization had dealt with what do you do when you're handed stolen documents. And so that day, in just a few hours, they had to confront those issues. On the front page above the fold.
It was huge news.
The blunt fact is that for millions of decent and loyal Americans, the Federal Bureau of Investigation has become the Federal Bureau of Intimidation.
This is not a police state. I've been to police states. I know what they are.
The FBI once considered installing an informant as Imperial Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan and distributed a Black Panther coloring book that depicted the police as saber-toothed pigs. These and many other dirty tricks carried out by the Bureau were revealed by the FBI itself yesterday when it released more than 50,000 pages from files on its counterintelligence program, codenamed COINTELPRO. The papers tell of a 15-year campaign of dirty...
It was like a hole had opened in the dam and water was pouring out. It was the fortress was under siege.
This is the government. The government can do whatever it wants. Don't you know that? He's violating the Bill of Rights. It's against the Constitution. Don't be bothering the U.S. government with the Constitution.